Hello, once again. Hope wherever you are, you've had a good weekend. I know I did. I'm back for more of Odinmade Hero. And last week, on Friday, I think that was the last stream. It's weird. It was just a weird mishmash of streams last week, partially because of technical issues and also just the holiday. But last week, we were working on kind of implementing this new understanding of how our collision rule table is being filled. And if I go down here, yeah, so instead of adding it randomly throughout the entity sort of render group code, I don't know, entity update code, it gets toggled here in the handle collision call, and then down underneath all of this stuff we remove it. Or was it further down here? Trying to remember. Maybe we didn't get that far, because I know we kind of wrapped things up in a not totally done state. But we added in this idea of these overlapping entities that we're keeping track of when we're doing the collision detection. And then, yeah, we remove that list of we remove an entity from that list at this point based on some other stuff. Anyways, there was a lot of kind of not super big changes, but it's like minutia that wasn't really sticking anyways. And that being said, I don't think it's too important really, because we're gonna move on here before too long, I think. Well, we're working towards adding this notion of Z, and that's kind of how the collision detection plays a role in all of this, because we're trying to see like how collision against midway up the stair goes. And conceptually, I kind of understand what's happening there and what Casey is trying to show us how to do. And I think that's really the important thing, not so much the minutia as far as the code goes. We'll get right back into it here in a second, and Casey will help us wrap up this change. But one thing I wanted to mention starting this week off is that I think I'm going to try a new streaming schedule of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and just see how that goes for a while, because we started off strong. Things were really hot, 5 days a week, but that is a lot. And slow and steady wins the race to some extent. I don't want to get burnt out on doing this, because I do enjoy it. It's just, I think I need to mix it up a little bit, break it up, and do some other things. Get a little bit of that spare time back on Tuesdays and Thursdays to explore other stuff. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. So today is Monday, and then I'll be back Wednesday, and then again on Friday this week until further notice. I should really get better about setting up like a proper time of day, but my schedule has been so unpredictable that I haven't been able to commit to starting off at a certain time each day. Maybe that'll change in the relatively near future. It's always somewhere in the hopefully early afternoon. Some days it's in the late afternoon. But I would like to be more consistent with that. So we'll see how that goes. But for now, just one day at a time, like usual. So let's go ahead and kick off day 74, where we'll be working on moving entities up and down stairwells.
Start recording. Hello everyone, and welcome to Handmade Hero, the show where we code a complete game live on Twitch. No library, no engine, just us and our code. And we're at the point right now where we're trying to do a little bit of cleanup before going on break. We are going to be on break next week because people wanted some time to catch up, so we're going to take a week off and people can catch up with the series as necessary. So what we're doing right now is we're actually kind of going through and just improving our handling of sort of we're making a 2D game to some degree, but we also sort of have three-dimensional elements in it. And so what we're kind of doing is saying, well, let's go in there and we're trying to figure out exactly how we want to handle that third dimension, how we want it represented, how we're going to handle moving up and and down between things, that sort of stuff. So we sort of hit upon something interesting yesterday, and we didn't quite have a chance to really go explore it. So today what we're going to do is we're actually going to go explore that. Before I get started, though, just a reminder, anyone who pre-ordered the game on handmadehero.org, if you want to follow along with today's episode coding at home, today's episode is day 74. So you want to unzip day 73 source code into a directory, and then you'll be able to follow along with us as we go, because that's the code that I'm starting with today. So let's go ahead and get things started here. I'm going to load up everything that we have going. Okay. So let's take a quick second to recap what I thought was a pretty interesting thing we kind of discovered yesterday regarding how entity collisions are handled, basically. So previously, let me go ahead and start a little place here for us to draw day 74. So what we were doing before, we kind of just implemented some very simple collision things, and I had sort of thought a little bit about some ways we wanted to handle things. And so what we had ended up implementing just for the time being was a system whereby, assuming that you had an entity, and maybe you had, like, here's the hero, and here is the monstar, and you're trying to attack the monstar, you do something like you throw a sword, so here's our sword, or S word, as the case may be. You throw a sword, and that sword is going to go, and maybe the sword might want to pass through the monster and do damage. Like it has piercing or something, so it's not going to stop. It's going to go straight through. And we had a number of ways that we could think about handling this, and there's just a lot of different sort of concerns involved in what seems like a very simple thing. If you actually want to think it through and do it right, there's actually quite a bit here to think about. And what I had implemented before is I'd said, well, you know what I'll do? I'll implement a thing which basically says, for any entity, pair, like the sword and the monstar. When the sword hits the monstar, I'm going to have a system which is basically like a little record-keeping thing, right? I'm going to have a little table. And what I'm going to do is when the sword hits the monstar, because I don't want to process the fact that the sword hit the monstar any more than once, I just want to do whatever happens when a sword hits the monstar and then be done with it. I'm going to, at that point, when the sword hits, so the sword comes this way, it hits the monstar, I'm going to go ahead and add into here the sword monstar entry, right? And then from then on, every other frame, I'm going to look in there and see, oh, sword monstar was already processed, so I'm not going to process it again, right? Then when we get to the end, and the sword, travels the distance it's allowed to travel and then has to be removed, what we're going to do is we're just going to clear all of the things that were in this table, right? So anything that was in the table, I shouldn't say all the things that had the sword in it in this table, right? They're going to go away. So that was an easy way that robustly handles the case where you have some kind of projectile and you want to process hits in any way that you want. You can know how many times you've looked at something, you can do all kinds of stuff because this table can store whatever we want, and it persists through the life of that hit. Now, what we wanted to do yesterday was we wanted to say, let's have a stairwell, right? Something like this where you're kind of like going down into the abyss, right? Here is the abyss, or just the next floor. And so you're going to walk down the stairwell, and what we wanted to have happen was say, okay, if here's the hero, right, and they're walking in this direction, this is top down now, this is from the top. If we're going to walk in this direction, what I want to do is say, well, when the hero overlaps the stairwell, then I want him to be able to move downward. I want his Z to go downward as he sort of overlaps that stairwell, if that makes sense. So when he gets higher, when he gets to here, I want the Z value to be the next level down, and when he's here, I want the Z value to be essentially where he currently is. Pretty basic, right? But we want a system that allows us to write code like that very easily, so we don't have to do a lot of thinking about it, right? We don't want to have to do a lot of work to implement things like that. We want our collision detector to make that easy for us. And so what I was going to do is I was going to say, all right, and we started coding this yesterday, all right, we'll have a notion of whether things are inside or outside of things. So at the start of a frame, we'll basically do a test to see what's overlapping. So, maybe the hero's here at the start of the frame, we'll say, okay, he's overlapping the stairwell. And then at the end of the frame, we'll basically say, okay, if he's not overlapping the stairwell anymore, that's fine, or whatever, we can process what's happening during that movement, right? Excuse me. So that's kind of like what we were sort of talking about doing in the processing of the movement of the entities. And what I realized when I was doing that was like, well, wait a minute, can't we just use this table directly? Like, can't we just use the table when we start up and say, okay, when we're overlapping something, let's add an entry to this table, and that way there's somewhere to store information about it as well. And then when we're done, we can remove stuff from that table. That way, we're always using the same thing. Instead of having some kind of special handling for things that overlap, we just have a table which is basically telling us about the situations that these things are in, and we just use that. And that seems like a pretty good way to go to me. That just seems like a good way to go. So I don't really know. That just seems like a good idea, and it seemed like that was going to make things a lot more unified and clear if we did that in the code. So that's kind of what I want to explore today. But other things that I was thinking about as well were things like, okay, so when the hero is traveling inside this region and we want his Z to be mapped to where he is on this thing, we have sort of this other kind of, I don't know how you want to phrase it, we have this other sort of special, we almost want to do a little bit of special processing because of the fact that these stairwells, if we look up from the side view, right, because we kind of want to treat them as ramps, basically, when we do our movement processing, our movement processing is going to work like that. And really what we want our movement processing to be doing is something like that, right? We want it to move the same kind of rate, so we want it to look like that, right? That's what we'd like to do. And so one thing that I was thinking that we could do as well is we could sort of say, okay, if we have our movement code, when it does the move, we've got this sort of region check that says, are you intersecting the stairwell? If you are intersecting the stairwell, we could do that check again for the destination point, and assuming that the destination point is still within the stairwell, right, we move it down to that position, or something similar to that, right? And that way we can get some, and I guess we should say we move it down to that position, right? I don't know, it's kind of complicated. It's starting to really do like full 3D processing sort of on the movement of the guy, which maybe we don't want to do. You know, maybe we just don't want to deal with that or get into stuff like that. But I was just thinking about it, and I was like, well, if you really wanted to handle this correctly in terms of how, you know, you would conceptualize the problem in terms of a more realistic simulation of what happens when someone's going. I mean, you could imagine us even going a little further and saying that there actually was an actual stairwell, and we actually looked at where you were, and the Z was like quantized, right, to like certain stair steps. So the hero goes like ding, 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 ding. You know, we can do that as well. There's all sorts of stuff we could do there, right? And I don't know how far we want to go down that path, but it's just something that's worth noting. Finally, there's the easiest thing, which I thought of, which is actually a way of cheesing out on all of this stuff. And I don't know, you know, maybe this is a better way to do it, and we could do it this way right now and just put a note in. I don't know. But another thing we could do is, instead of processing at the beginning of the frame, instead of allowing the person to leave or enter the stairwell inside the collision iteration loop, right? What we could do instead is just treat that as something that only gets checked once. So basically, at the beginning of the frame, if the guy is on the stairwell, then just whatever the move is just considered a stairwell move. So the stairwell basically gets to do its operation to the guy, whatever it's going to be, at that outset, and that's all there is to it, right? And, you know, that's one way we could process it. And then we just say, okay, he doesn't, until he actually is outside of the stairwell, on the next frame, that's, you know, if he moves outside the stairwell, then on the next frame, he won't be under the action of the stairwell anymore, right? I don't know. Again, just something to think about, and that may be the easiest way for us to implement the stuff for now. I really don't know which of these is going to be more interesting, and you can certainly imagine this kind of applies pretty easily to other stuff too. So let's take another case. Let's say we take the case of like poisoned ground or lava or something like this, right? So let's say we have lava here, right? So this is our lava, right? It's so hot and burning, it burns me, right? Ouch. And so, you know, we have our hero, and our hero moves into the lava, and our hero travels in the lava, and the hero moves out of the lava, right? So if we want to process this exactly right, what we need to do is handle that case where the person enters the lava, and handle that case where they exit the lava, and actually count, you know, if it's distance or time-based, actually count exactly the period where they're in it in order to apply like the lava damage, right? The cheesier way to do it is the point sampling way. And the point sampling way basically says, okay, I'm going to count however many of these land in there. So at the beginning of every frame, this is not in the lava, so it doesn't take lava damage. This is in the lava, so it does. This is in the lava, so it does. This isn't in the lava, so it doesn't, right? And so, you know, again, this is just a question of how, you know, intricate do we want to make this. And so if we only want to do the point sampling method, then basically what we would do is we would say, all right, there's a separate check, right? Separate.
It's amazing how much work. I mean, I remember it taking several, you know, multiple days, probably like 5 whole days to get the whole, just going up, you know, a staircase or a ramp, as the case may be, and being able to come back down it. And it continues to be I don't know if a point of friction is the right thing to call it, but it regularly comes up as a thing that you have to a consideration that you have to have when you're, as we make more and more changes. And it just seems like such a simple thing conceptually. Oh, I just want to go up or down in the map. But it like, because we're not just doing like a side scrolling thing and just hopping up platforms up and down where there's no depth to anything, like what a lot of 2D games do, right, is where you're walking in two-dimensional space, maybe, and it's side scrolling, but if there's any depth, it's like maybe there's just one additional plane, and that way it's very rigid, and you either can go into like the background or the foreground of the 2D scene, and then you're kind of walking around things maybe in that way. I saw a demo not too long ago that like showed that idea, but like actually looking at it, if you would flip, as though you would flip the 2D representation of the game horizontally, so that you were looking at like the 2 lanes. It was just a weird thing to think about. But this is a bit different because we could just go up and up and up in Z, or down and down and down, instead of there just being 2 whole dimensions and that's it, or 3 or 4. Like the point is that you don't just step into the new Z chunk. You're moving incrementally towards it because you're like going offset from whatever the bottom of the current chunk is. You get the idea.
Check. Where we check for inclusions in spaces like stairwells, lava, anything like that aren't collision events. So people don't collide with the lava and like enter and leave it or anything like that, right? That doesn't actually happen. All there is an inclusion check that happens separately, and then, you know, off you go. And so that may be a better thing for us to do for now. I don't really know. Where we basically say, okay, we'll do the for now, we'll just say we'll do the separate checks. It's easier because we've already done the code for that. And each time we check, we'll just pass the full DT for the frame as the effect time. So if we had like a thing that was like apply lava damage, we'd tell it the whole DT for the frame, apply the lava damage. We won't try to subdivide frames and figure out exactly how much of the time was spent inside the lava and out. But maybe we'll put in a to-do that basically says, okay, you know, maybe we start leaning on the sort of the table-driven system and try to do some more intelligent stuff there that would allow us to, you know, be smarter basically about that. Just something to think about. So I don't know. I really don't. I have no real opinion about how that that should work. It's just going to have to be a wait and see thing. So yeah. So maybe we do the simple separate check first, and we make a note, and then we see if we want to go the table route. I don't know. That seems like the best call to me right now, because until maybe we get a little further, maybe eventually it'll become clearer exactly what we need because of other things, and then we'll, you know, go on from there. And so sort of what I was saying is like, okay, you know, when we do this check for initial inclusion, instead of doing all this other stuff that we were doing in here, where we were doing our overlapping entities and this sort of stuff, where we were sort of adding and removing things, what we could do instead is sort of reverse back to the case where we weren't ever doing that, and we just add the collision rules or something like this. And we don't actually update that overlapping list. So we just say, okay, we don't update the overlapping list. We don't pass was overlapping. So let's see where that was. We don't need to do any of that. So when we do our handle collision call, we don't actually need this was overlapping stuff, like so on.
Okay, so I guess I did not. I mean, to be fair, I didn't even recognize a lot of this code. So maybe I should have inferred that that meant it wasn't going to stick around, but that's really not a good metric for me at all, because so much of the code that I've written doing this in Odin versus Zig, it has been like, wow, I really wrote all this crap in Zig, didn't I? Like, and that was the thing, is like I felt like I was so fixated on just trying to figure out how to do the thing that Casey was doing in Zig that I really didn't have the mental bandwidth to make the conceptual component stick, and that was probably the most important thing. But it's not like I didn't learn anything. Like, I don't know, it's probably easier this time overall just to get the concepts, because I have done a lot of this stuff to some extent already. Okay, so let's go over here and pull that out, and I think that also means that handle collision, well, maybe it does still take a bool overlapping. Oh, we didn't even start doing anything with that yet. Did we? Yeah, we didn't. But we still have a result. So yeah, I think that needs to stick around. I want to see one of those bread baking simulators, but it's being baked by lava. That's a very specific ask. I bet you could make that game if you were so inclined. It doesn't seem like it would be that difficult to whip up in something like a, you know, a Godot or a Unity, or hell, you just use like make it like a source thing. That sounds like something. What was Goat Simulator? Was Goat Simulator Source? I feel like Goat Simulator was Source, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay, so we get rid of. We still have this overlapping variable, but we're not doing anything with. Oh, this doesn't take that anymore. I see. Okay. So maybe those were the only changes Casey made.
And, you know, we just let it do its thing, and we leave it at that. So now a stairwell is no longer a thing that does collision at all, right? It's not a collision-based object in any way. I don't know how we were planning on doing this exactly. We'll have to take a second at the end of this to sort of clean that stuff up a bit. But basically,
I didn't even see what he dropped there. No, he put it back in. Okay.
I'll have to take a second at the end of this to sort of clean that stuff up a bit. But basically, so right now what we'll do is instead.
Now I'm talking about one of those hyper-realistic simulators that make bread with shit like gas expansion and moisture levels of each individual particle. So you want like a Kerbal Space Program tier bread simulator. Yeah, or like a, you know, like a flight simulator where you have to like know what the knots are of the wind and all that fun stuff. That's hardcore. Maybe Chelsea would get a kick out of that because she likes baking so much, but who's to say? Maybe that's your idea, man. Maybe you go and make that, and you'll get a huge. That I was listening to this game engineering podcast. I think that's literally what it's called, and the host interviewed the guy who did the Dragon Ruby project, which has been going on for like 10 years now. I'd heard about it maybe a couple years ago originally, and I've been seeing it pop up more and more, although it's probably also just because I've been looking more and more at games programming stuff. But anyway, he said that what he does is he focuses on having a specific niche in like, well, when he decides to tackle a project, it's something that is super duper niche that a lot of people like will have something that'll have like a cult following in its own right. So like something based around, I don't know if a TV show is a good example, but maybe like a certain type of board game or some kind of like old movie or something, or different hobbies. Like he goes after the creator of the Dragon Ruby project, bases his projects around that, which is a pretty interesting idea, because then you can appeal to the people that are a fan of that thing, whatever it is, and be like, look, I made this game just for you people. And then it'll be relevant to them in a way that like no AAA game ever could be, right? Because I'm trying to think of like a good example. Like, I don't know. Maybe a game for people that are just super duper into fancy cameras. I know that's got to be a thing. Like really fancy cameras with like all the different lenses, and then you can just like take pictures with different lenses, and it's camera simulator. I don't know. That's probably not a good example, but it's that sort of thing where you target that niche and you do it well, and then you create a market that literally, unless somebody else, like there's no competition, right? There's plenty of competition for like roguelikes, right? I don't know, maybe not so much anymore, but a few years ago it seemed like you would get made fun of for saying you wanted to make a roguelike. But maybe that's incorrect. That's just the sort of thing that I remember seeing when I, over the years, had started dabbling and like looking into, what do people do? How do people get started in games? And it's usually somebody asking beginner questions in the context of, hey, I have this idea to make a roguelike. I have such and such programming experience, or no programming experience, no game dev experience, whatever. Like the Bigfoot hunting game, that's exactly it. That's a perfect example, actually, because there's so many people out there. Like you post that game to like the cryptids subreddit or something like that, and you're off to the races, right? And then, all those Bigfoot nerds can give you like lore accurate Bigfoot gameplay change advice, maybe that sort of thing.
Change this to basically like handle, I don't know what you want to call it, but handle overlapping events, right? Or handle events based on area overlapping, something like that. And so what we can do here is say, all right, we're going to go through, and we don't really need to record anything per se, but we would go through and just say anybody who does movement has to.
Did we get rid of that other note? I guess, is this in a different place? I know we had two loops here. I think I pulled this out. No. He must have just changed the original one. Yeah, okay. That's what he did. Just don't want to forget my notes. I spend so much time checking them and reading them, right? Okay. Handle events based on area overlapping. Yes.
To obviously have a thing here where they're going to check for all the things that they could be sort of overlapping, and for anything that they are overlapping, we process a rule. So it's basically like a handle overlap kind of a thing, right? And so what I'd like to do is say this is going to happen before we actually try to take any step, right? So this is going to happen like right at the beginning, right? Just flat out. So right here, before we do anything else, we're going to go ahead and we're going to see if we're overlapping anything. So we'll call that handle overlap. We will pass it exactly the two that are overlapping, and we'll say that we kind of have a notion of who is moving. So the mover and the region or whatever, right? And we'll do like a should overlap as well, or like can overlap, right? And so the entity, the thing that's moving, is always going to be primal in this case, and we're going to handle it that way. So we do, we always say that the can overlap and the handle overlap are both going to kind of do their thing. So we'll do it that way, and then we'll have our should collide, right? I guess we should keep our name consistent there. So should overlap. It really should overlap test. It's a bad name. I wonder if it shouldn't just be can, right? Can. There we go. That seems better. Should.
Okay, can overlap and should collide is can collide. Where are we calling that? Is it just here? It might be like one other place. I guess that's it. Okay, so yeah. I guess I like can better too. Hold on while I block this bot. I really feel like I have no idea what I'm doing when I start clicking through Twitch and YouTube anymore. It's so much different from when, the old days. Every little improvement has just gotten further and further away from, like, some things are still obviously intuitive enough, but I just feel like, why don't I see it immediately? I feel like I should be able to just, it used to be like second nature. I didn't have to think about it. Now I have to think about it, what it is. How do I block somebody? Like a boomer? Just older millennial things, actually younger millennial things at this point.
Should collide. Can. In fact, I guess we don't
Oh, and then, well, is he going to get rid of that?
really need this at the moment either. This is just can collide. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, he got away from that whole flags thing, which, that's right. I think I left it as collides specifically. So it'd be something like that if we wind up bringing it back. I guess I don't imagine that that's going to come back. But in case it does, I'll just leave it commented out for now.
So if I do that, then we've got our can overlap and our handle overlap. This is not important anymore, and there we go.
Okay, so we go back down here. What the hell? Oh, was overlapping. So that is no more. And we weren't using it anywhere else, apparently, so. Okay.
This is not important anymore, and there we go. Except I need can collide to change its name here, and presumably I need to pass that in here. There we go. All right, so
if I just run this now, are we back to where we want to be? Well, we need to implement those, but otherwise it looks like we're good. I love when the YouTube app updated and completely changes the UI and breaks several features every few months. Yeah, it's just like a perpetual problem with software in general, and I curbed this problem by dealing with said software as infrequently or not at all as possible, to be honest. Like the less I have it in my life, the better, pretty much almost universally. But there's some things that you just can't not know how to use it and learn how to use it. But every single website has its own little convention, all these little idiosyncrasies, and you have to keep them all in line so that you know what it's like when you're on YouTube versus Twitch versus other thing versus whatever. It's a perpetual fragmentation of, like, how do I just do the thing, whatever the thing is.
now we need to, I should also probably just double check that we didn't break anything doing that change. So let me just go ahead and make sure that our code is still happily running. There it goes, and that's all good. So now what we need to do is just say, all right, we're going to test the entities. We now know, they're going to overlap, and I'll just write a function which handles the entity overlap such that if a hero or any other thing overlaps a stairwell, Z gets moved downward or upward, depending on where it is, right? And that seems pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, we're going to have to do some work to actually make the rendering show us that to any real degree. We don't have much in the way of that yet, but that can always be our next task. Move and region.
What? So he's pulling this code in to the can overlap definition. But this is what was happening inside of this branch. So what are you doing? What are you doing here, Casey? I don't get it. And our region. Okay. Gamney state. That's not right at all. All right, so we return a bool. And yeah, I guess I'll just do what he's doing here. This doesn't make sense to me. But I'm sure it will soon.
Call that mover and region. So the thing that's moving and the thing that ends up overlapping. So basically, if the region, right now we don't have anything really here, but essentially we're just doing, if the region type is one of those stairwell regions, then pretty much that's the only case that we actually need to handle at the moment. But the lava case would be another example here of something that we want to do. So we've got our handle overlap as well, and we will.
Okay, so yeah, he yeeted that code in there for no reason. All right. And then we'll just say that this returns, and we'll stick that result variable up there. And this should be mover type, not region type. And now we just need our what was it? Handle overlap call.
Build that out. That's again just taking whoever's moving and whichever entity it is sort of moving, or it is contained in. And I also said, like I was saying before, I want the time step in there in case there's a time-based effect that's happening. That way it applies it for a period of time, so that if we do decide later to handle it a little more accurately, and in fact I'll put that to do in here to do handle overlapping precisely by moving it into the collision loop. And we'll just keep improving things as we go if we decide that's a good idea. All right. So anyway, if it's stairwell, the result is true. Otherwise, the result is true. Otherwise, the result is false. So that's pretty straightforward for now. It'll presumably get more interesting later. And then when we go to handle the overlap, what I want to do is say that assuming that the region is a stairwell, then I'm going to do that processing where I'm going to effectively change, and I'm assuming I'm going to basically change the position and perhaps also change that velocity to be pointing downwards as well. I'll just take a look here at how that works. So the DDP, let me just see what we're doing here. So the DDP is passed in, right? Is that what happens? So we're passing in that acceleration. And so the acceleration gets gravity added to it as well, right there. I mean, I suppose, really, all we would have to do, if we wanted to, is modify the ground location when you were on the stairwell, right? Because this code right here actually will just do what we need it to do, scary as that is. So I wonder, I mean, it sounds a little odd, but like, I wonder if we don't just want to do it that way for now. So in other words, you'd handle it at the end of the frame. It'd be backwards looking. Don't love it, but, and you basically say like, where's the ground? The ground's at 0, 0 or something like this, right? You see what I'm saying?
Not really, but we'll go with it. So instead of doing this up front, we're gonna drop that down. Where was that? Right here. For zeroing out Z. In fact, this might replace that zeroing out, right? Because that's kind of what this to do is all about, what we're working on now. So can overlap. That's taking. Is that going to take the test entity or the entity that we passed in? Probably the test entity, right? Well, no, because it's the entity that's moving, but then why would you be doing that on every single loop? That doesn't make sense. Okay. Why not? We'll do that. And then as for this, I think it's just same thing, but it takes the DT, which I think we are getting in this proc. So this is all just the same stuff being passed in with the DT. Okay.
And then you would basically update the ground inside that handle overlap call. It's kind of weird, but it sort of starts to get at what I would like, which is, you know, a notion of where the ground is. So maybe it's not that crazy, and it's probably not exactly how I don't love the way it's kind of weird, but you know, in this 2D thing where we don't really have a strong notion of where the ground is, we're gonna have to kind of build a semantic understanding of ground that makes sense everywhere. And so I'm just gonna kind of let this go. I'm gonna see where it leads, because I'm hoping that it...
Oh, so I thought I heard something. I couldn't tell what it was, and now I think it was just the family. Something's going on with the oldest, causing trouble, getting into things he shouldn't be.
Eventually it will sort of coalesce into a nice way to handle ground. Again, like I said, I normally program 3D stuff, so I'm used to having to think about a ground as like some full 3D thing, and in this case, that would be a real waste of time and energy for the game to even have in it. So it seems like you'd rather just have the ground is always the ground, and the only time that you really do anything else is when you're on something special, like a stairwell or some other special sort of Z-affecting thing. So, yeah, I guess we'll just say, you know, we'll go ahead and say that we've got ground here. We could even make the ground be a general query. I guess we could just make actual ground shapes. And I think that seems like a waste of time. So I'm thinking you only really want to handle colliders. Yeah, so I'm just gonna keep exploring this, because I just don't feel comfortable yet. I don't have a solid idea of exactly what I want. So I'm gonna keep on pushing here, and we'll see what happens. So for now, I'm going to pass the address of ground so we can modify it, but later what we might do is pass kind of a bundle of stuff to that handle overlap and let that do it instead. So yeah, so what we'll do here is we'll just say, all right.
I wonder if he got rid of these overlapping entities and I just did not notice for whatever reason. Because if we go down into here, no, I don't know. I really don't know.
You can modify the ground level. So what we'll do is we'll come up here, and in our handle overlap call, we will pass in that ground level. So, and if it's a stairwell, then what's going to happen is we're going to find out where you are in the stairwell and set the ground level accordingly, right? And that also brings up another thing, which is I've realized how we really should be drawing stairwells, which is not with a stupid rock, which is what we were doing before, but it's really actually with a rectangle. What I should have been doing was using a rectangle. So I'm going to take a look here and see about drawing a rectangle. I know we've got one in our draw hit points function. So I'd like to do one of these push rect calls. Oh, wow. Just the other night, someone asked about vector 4s, and I was like, eventually we'll put some in for handling colors. It looks like we already did, and I totally forgot. I knew we eventually would, but I guess eventually was actually in the past. So whoever asked that question, not only eventually will we put in colors, we actually already put in colors as v4s. There you go. You learn something about your code base every day that you should have known because you wrote it. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead in here, and I'm going to say that we're going to draw that stairwell as an actual rectangle now.
That does feel like it makes more sense, doesn't it? Draw on a rock. It's more like a, what is it called? A port key or something from Harry Potter, where they touch it and it just teleports them. Okay, so over here, do I have a push rect call already written? I do. And we drop that in. And does this take an offset? Well, I guess we don't need an offset. Yeah. So we're just going to pass in a color there. But I guess I wanted to see... Oh, well, that's... Yeah, this has to change. I guess I could just zero these out for now, because these aren't going to be what we use for those. And we don't have a color yet either. What even does this take? We're missing something. Oh, it has to be by address. For some reason, that's not already a pointer. Okay. And we're not passing in ground here. So what? I don't even remember. Yeah, we're still not using that anywhere. I just want to see if we'll do something somewhat right at this point. Maybe it's all busted. Nope, looks like we just got code that's kind of doing nothing at this point. But we're trying to get it to that point where we can have it, well, it's probably not drawing the rectangle at all, is it? Yeah, it's because zeroed out, has no dimensions, so we're just drawing nothing for that. Okay, we're getting there. I'm just getting too antsy. I'm like, come on, I want to see something change. I want to see something happen.
So that we don't have any of this weird wondering exactly what its dimensions are. That'll just help me to debug it, basically. So I'm going to do a push rect on that piece group. We've got basically a location that we want to draw, and then we've got a dimension. I don't remember at all what we actually did for our conventions here, so I'm just going to look it up. It says basically that we pass the group. We pass where it is, I assume relative to the camera. Oh, it's relative to the piece. So it's actually just the center, right? It's no offset. We've got the offset Z, which again, we don't really need any of. It can just be drawn flat on. And then we have its dimension. And so its dimension is just going to be its entity, actual entity dimension, right? So that's just going to be entity dim XY, right? So then the color.
So that would be, yeah, right here. And is it a V2? It sure is. Well, that's the third thing. Why does his push rect call look like it takes more? Oh, I see. Offset Z. Yeah, I think you did that wrong, actually. So this, the second param is that entity dim XY, and then we zero out the Z. And then the color, if I remember right, he's going to make it yellow. What is yellow? We want alpha all the way up or down, I guess. We want it opaque. We want a nice solid yellow. What is that, red and green? Is that right? Illegal compound, whatever that is. What? So the offset, oh, the offset is second? Which it doesn't need to be, and then the dimension, and the color. Offset, I see. Because I made offset a V3. Okay. So this can just stay like that? No? Okay. Wait. No, the dim is a V2. The offset, okay, zero out the offset. Pass in XY. And then the color, okay. That's what I did wrong. And then I don't need to pass in that Z coefficient at all. So this should give us a nice rectangle, right? Yeah. There's our staircase.
We'll just draw a yellow there so we can see, and that should be just about all we need, I think, to get our stairwell. So let's take a look at our stairwell. There's our stairwell. That's good. And so what we want to do is be able to move onto that stairwell and just kind of like move onto it and have it allow us to move not only through it, but basically like to move down a level as we go, or in this case, I guess up a level. So that should be relatively straightforward. However, what we do need to do is we need to be, I guess this gets actually a little bit complicated, a little more complicated than I was thinking, because we do have one other case that we can decide how we want to handle, I guess. But basically, the last thing that we do have to worry about is when somebody moves onto a stairwell, right? There's two ends to a stairwell. So I guess we could look at it from the side view again, right? So there's two ends to the stairwell, and let's say that somebody's walking up here, right? Because here's the floor or whatever, right? If somebody walks, whoa, that was ugly. I don't know what just happened there. So somebody walks here. We don't want them to snap down to here because they shouldn't be able to do that on the stairwell, I don't think. What we'd rather do is prevent them from walking there, right? We want to stop them. That should hit and stop. Whereas if they walk onto this end, then that's fine because then they just go down the stairs like they should. So the question is, how do we want to handle that case, right? So at first I'm not going to handle that case, but then we've got that issue, which is basically you can just walk straight onto it, and we'll see what we want to do. What we could do is put in blockers that block you from doing that, and the stairwell is a hybrid of that, right? And then the other thing we can do is handle it in the actual stairwell processing so that the stairwells understand that. And I don't know which one of those two will be more logical, but we'll find out. All right, so if we do this now, I think we're good to go with drawing it. So oops, what did I do? I accidentally typed a U. So really all we need to do here is just say, okay, where is the guy inside this region? And in order to do that, what I want to do is introduce the concept of a mapping for any rectangle. And because this is just kind of a thing that might be handy and we need it for this case, we might as well do it. What I want to do is say, all right, for any of our three-dimensional rectangles, which we now have, right, I want to be able to say there's a minimum corner to this rectangle, right? Let's say that this is our minimum corner, right? And here's our x, here's our y, here's our z, right? And so this minimum corner, and then it has the dimension is the distance over to the maximum corner, which we'll say is here, right? What I'd like to be able to do is, given a point P, right, let's say that this point here, I'd like to be able to produce what amounts to barycentric coordinates for this rectangle, meaning coordinates that range from 0 to 1, right, our famous 0 to 1, because everything is nice in the 0 to 1 range, right, range from 0 to 1, and which represent how far along each axis of the rectangular, the right rectangular prism, this shape, how far you are, the box, right? So basically, if in x you were here, then you would be something like 0.4, right? If you were here, you'd be like 0.8. If you're here, you'd be 1. If you're here, you'd be 0. And the same on all the other axes. So we take what's a normal 3D vector, right? And we want to produce those. Now, how do we produce those? Well, the first thing we want to do is recognize that the minimum is 0, 0, 0 in our coordinate system, right? When we're saying we want to produce these new coordinates, we're saying that if you're at the minimum, right, you would be at the barycentric coordinate 0, 0, 0, right? And I'm saying barycentric, but that's probably not really necessarily a useful term to use here. So I guess what I just want to say is, in some sense, relative normal coordinates. Relative meaning they're relative to where the box is. So the box may actually be out in space. The origin may be like over here somewhere, right? So this may actually be 0, 0, 0 in our coordinate system. And this is the minimum of the box, right? So the box is actually out here somewhere. But we want to create a little mini coordinate system, essentially, where the minimum corner of the box is 0, 0, 0, right? So it's relative. We're producing relative coordinates. And we're producing normal coordinates. Normal meaning they are normalized, right? Meaning they are between 0 and 1. So even if this box is 10 meters long, I don't want it to be 10 when it gets to here. I want it to be 1. So how do we make it relative? Well, trivial. We just subtract the place that we actually want to be 0, 0, 0, right? Makes perfect sense. Because if we know that we want the point min, right, in our coordinate system to map to 0, 0, 0, then min minus min obviously equals 0, 0, 0, right? So what we want to do is just subtract min from our coordinate system. You could think of this, you could do this in algebra too. If you wanted to sort of, let's say you just had no idea, you're like, I don't know how to do that. You could say, well, I've got a point. For any point, right, I want to basically add something to it. I want to do some kind of translation, right, for our question mark value, whatever it is, we don't know, some v. For every point, we want to add some v, okay? This is our expression. And we want that point to equal our relative coordinates, right? So this is our relative coordinates, or we could say p prime. So these are our relative coordinates. So what did I just say? I said when we do min, we want that to be 0, 0, 0. Well, just plug those in. When I pass the point min, right, I get 0, 0, 0, right, or the 0 vector. That means min plus v equals the 0 vector, right? Solve the equation for the thing we want to know. V equals 0 minus min, or negative min. So that lets us know exactly what we need to do. We need to subtract min from anything we want in order to get it centered around this thing. Right? Simple enough. But now we have coordinates that can be anywhere in this box. They happen to be 0, 0, 0 here, but they could be as long as they want. And again, how do we normalize something? Well, we know how to normalize things, right? If you have something of a given length and you want to turn it from 0 to the length into 0 to 1, you just divide by the length, right? We've done this a bunch of times with like vector lengths and all that sort of stuff. So we have, right, our point minus our minimum divided by however long that point was, right? For any given, so it's kind of hard to sorry, not how long the point was, how long the min is, right? We want it to be relative to this. We want it to be relative to the maximum extent of the axes, right? So over however long the min is, that gives the new coordinate, right? So px min x, right? This is basically the equation for one of the x's. The same is true for the y's and the z's, right? So subtract the min, divide by, you know what? I don't even know. What am I? I'm going way too fast here. This is not even. This means nothing. What have I written here? There's no such thing as the length of min. We already said that's stupid. Pretend I never said that. That's not what I meant. I meant the length of one of these things, right? That's max minus min. Yeah, going too fast. I got carried away. It's true, right? Because if this is the max
I didn't even think about that. I mean, I feel like I understood what he was saying, even though he wrote it down wrong. It's just like one of those things where it's like your brain knows what it's trying to do, but like actually writing out the equation, it's like I do the same thing when I'm coding. I know what I'm trying to code. I know what I'm trying to do, but then I just write the complete ass wrong thing, and I'm like, what happened that I was looking at this and I was thinking about the problem as I was writing it, but the complete wrong thing flew out onto the keyboard from my fingers.
x coordinate, and that's the minimum x coordinate of the thing, then the length between them is the max minus the min, right? So little mistake there. Pretend I didn't say that. So that's what we want. We want that max x minus the min x, and so on. So that's pretty easy, right? It's not complicated. It's very straightforward when you think about it.
Yes. Thank you. I got it. Everything okay out there?
Would I be able to grab my yarn bag?
You want me to grab it for you?
I don't think
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I just don't worry about it.
I want to go check.
Chelsea's got all kinds of holiday projects she's working on this year. You're very ambitious. Love you. Thanks for the tea. Oh, it's a spot. I've been up since 2:30 a.m. And I can't even blame my kids. I didn't, have a freak out or anything like that. I didn't wake up in the middle of the night because I had a nightmare that something terrible was happening to my family or anything, because that does happen. But I tried to go back to sleep, and it was 3:30. I tried to go back to sleep for an hour, so at that point it was 3:30, and I was just like, this is stupid. What am I doing here? So I just got out of bed and I did the rest of my day. Did my day all up front. And honestly, it felt really good. Managed to get out on a walk really, really early, and there was nobody. Actually, by that point, by the time I got on the road, there was a few cars, but not as busy as it normally would be when I do my morning walk. And got my workout done early, got my shower done early. Good stuff. What did Ollie and Levi dress up as for Halloween? Yeah, I didn't. I think I said that we went downtown, and they had a huge trick-or-treating event for all the kids in town, and it was awesome. But we went as pretty much all of the biggest players from the Nightmare Before Christmas. So I was Jack, Chelsea was Sally, of course, and then Levi was in a little Oogie Boogie onesie or sleeper with a hood and everything, and then Ollie was Zero, and it was awesome. Yeah, we got so many compliments on our costume attire because we were all like themed together, and Chelsea did a really good job on the makeup for me as Jack, but in particular for her as Sally. Like, it was I at least 5 people went out of their way to be like, oh my god, I love your costumes. So yeah, it was great. It was really cute.
But I want to make a function that basically does that, so I can grab that value anytime that I want. So what I'm saying is I want to basically do v3 get say barycentric, then we'll pass some rectangle and some point, right? And then what we're going to do is for each of the coordinates, we're just going to go ahead and make those coordinates be equal to the equation that I just said, which is you subtract the min, so a.min.x, and so on, and you divide by whatever the length is, right? So a.max.x minus a.min.x, like so. And that's just going to be, oops, shouldn't have done it that way. There we go. And that's pretty straightforward there. Now we do have one problem, which is that in the case where these were 0, like one of the dimensions was collapsed, the entity didn't have any size there, that would be illegal, right? This would produce a nonsense value. So since I don't know that we really have a performance concern here, I'm going to introduce another thing that we can do to make this a little bit more robust to those kinds of failures, which is a safe ratio function. And the way that I like to do these is to say you pass a numerator, and you pass a divisor, right? And it does a divide for you. So basically, it just does the result equals the numerator over the divisor, right? Like so. And it returns that to you, but...
Man, I feel like there's a baked-in Odin utility somewhere. Some proc somewhere on some core package that gives me exactly what it is he's writing here, this safe ratio. I wonder if it's like, if I import math real quick. This is the math file in our game code after all. Can't remember how to import something. Took me a minute. Okay, so it would be something like math dot safe divide, maybe divide non-zero. Man, it's so weird. I thought I saw something like that. Maybe it would have been in Lineage, but I doubt it. Yeah, nothing like that. In my head, I was thinking I'd seen something like that before, and maybe I have, but it could have also just been some custom code that was in some other Odin project that I was looking at. So, sucks to be me. I gotta write it myself. Okay. So we have safe ratio 0, and we have our numerator and our divisor. And this is not how you define a procedure in Odin. We have our results as usual. I wrote that all out, I didn't mean to. And then we return, but I still have to finish doing this. Okay. And this should all be rect. And then, what? Oh. I need to stop doing that. This is max, that is max. Okay. Okay. We're getting there. So we actually need to check to make sure that that divisor is greater than 0. So I'll just assume, well, I guess it should just be if it does not equal 0, because negatives would be fine, right? I would think anyway. And then I think, yeah, all of these subtractions have to happen before we do that divide for this to work out the way it needs to. Nice.
What we can do now is we can say, all right, this safe ratio will be designed to return a particular value in the case where the thing doesn't actually work, right? So if that divisor is not equal to 0, we'll do the divide. But if the divisor is equal to 0, we'll return some prefab result. And so safe ratio 0, I usually do that as well as a safe ratio 1, right? That would return 1 in the case, depending on what the default value should be. And so one thing that's pretty handy to do usually is to do safe ratio n, and then that just returns whatever the n is. And then I make essentially inline versions of the other two that just return those prefab values, right? Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes some sense. So basically, it just goes safe ratio n, and it passes the numerator, the divisor, and whatever the value actually is. There we go. Return result. And so again, this is for cases where you're less concerned about...
I see. I was just trying to think through what the point is of doing things this way. So that I can understand whether a procedure group makes sense, and I don't think it does. So we just have our safe ratio n, and result just gets assigned to be whatever the default was. I don't know why we would have any result that wasn't 0 or 1, but we'll just go with it. And so that looks good. And that means that this just calls, well, it's going to have to return results of this. And 0 is the default there. 1's the default here, and everybody's happy.
Performance and more concerned about robustness. You don't care if you're doing a bunch of if checks to see what the situation is, and in this case I think that's probably where we would be most of the time, and certainly we had a case where it was a performance problem, we just optimized that one case, right? No big deal. So let's just go ahead and say that these are all going to be safe ratios, and so that way in the case where they actually have a problem, they'll be okay. So if one of these dimensions is erroneous and collapses to 0, we'll still be able to produce a value there.
Okay, so right here we're doing safe ratio 0 for all of those, like you just said. And I guess that makes this a bit easier to follow what's going on. Take the result of the positions coordinate minus the rectangle's min, so the negative min, right? To have things be centered around the origin of the position. And then go out from the max to the min to get, yeah, the barycentric coordinate. Okay. What a big word. I should feel smart for using that word, but all I did was copy what he did, so I don't.
So that seems fine to me, right? Safe ratio 0, safe ratio 1, result equals n, divised by equals 0. Yeah, so that's all good. And so that allows us to do our barycentric here. We can say get barycentric, and this will give us our barycentric version back. So now we can say that we have the region's dimension. Excuse me. This is kind of a little bit of a roundabout way to do this, I suppose. If you think about it, well, I think we have center dimension, right? So our region, we pass in basically the rectangle bounding box that represents the region, like so. Then we just say wherever the actual mover was. We get those barycentric coordinates back. And one thing we can sort of do here, we could also assert that they lie between 0 and 1, because one of the things that's true about this is this will not clamp those values. I don't know if we want to clamp those values. We could, right? We could additionally say that they have to be between 0 and 1, because let's say that you pass in a p that's actually outside the box. It would not clamp it to the box. So maybe we want to do that eventually. I don't know. In this case, we're only handling it when we overlap, so we know that pretty much does have to be. So what I'm going to do is say, all right, we get that barycentric back. Now we know where you are, and we're saying that y, I guess, is our range. Y is the thing that we want to vary. Z by. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that whatever that y value that comes back, that's how far, right? That's that barycentric y value is for our stairwell. That barycentric y value is how far you've gone, right? So here's one end of the stairwell, here's the other. So let's just say that we take that value, and that determines that z value of the ground, right? So what we want to do is say that the ground equals the barycentric v value, y value, and we want to do essentially a linear interp, or a linear interpolation, like a lerp here, right? And what a lerp is I've talked about this many times before. It's that magic function I said we would use everywhere and have used multiple times already, and will continue to use a bunch of times, right? It's this thing, 1 minus t times the starting value plus t times the ending value, moves you between two values proportional to this t, and the t's ranges from 0 to 1, right? You've seen it multiple times. If you don't remember it, now would be a good time to go back for a refresher to where I've talked about it before, or watch the interpolation video that's on my thing. I have a whole video that's just about interpolation. But anyway, so what we want to do here is say this t value, right? The t value is our y. That's our y value, how far you are in the thing, our barycentric y. And the s and the e are the z values we want. So this s value would be like the z min, and the e value would be the z max for the ground, right? And so as you go up. We could also make it the other way. As you go down. Who cares? Doesn't matter for our stairwell. It would be nice to draw it in a particular direction. So we probably could do something like that, where we try to draw it a little more clearly which direction it was going. I can think of a pretty easy way to do that. Maybe we'll go throw that in. But anyway, so what we want to do is we want to do that linear interpolation. We haven't made a function for it yet, but we should throw one in here, right? That's just an easy way to sort of do lerps, especially 2D, 3D lerps, that sort of stuff. We probably want all of those, right? So where's our squaring function? There it is. Let's make another one here, a lerp function. So there's our lerp function. It will go from A to B.
Okay, I didn't catch that he was actually passing in a pointer to this value, so this actually needs to be passed by value, and this needs to be a reference to that ground coordinate. And I'm pretty sure that this lineage lerp call will work just fine, so we don't have to implement it ourselves.
So here's our result, and our result is just going to be that 1 minus t plus t times b. It's exactly the thing that I just said and that we have used before. That's going to be the value that we get back. So we're just going to go ahead and lerp using that barycentric y coordinate as a lerp. We're going to lerp between our z min and our z max. So our z min is whatever the region's p z value is, right? Plus, or I should say, actually, we can actually do this right with our rectangle. So if we remember what our rectangle is, right? Here is our region rect. Now we can just say, okay, the region rect, it's min z, and the region rect's max z. That will just lerp between those, right? And that changes the location of the ground. And now, since the guy is always pinned to the ground, basically he'll just snap to the ground. Now, unfortunately, like I said, we don't really have any good rendering for this stuff or anything like that. Of course, we need one more thing too, which is that the guy can't hit the stairwell.
Got some weirdness here, so that has to be the region rect. What is your problem? You just want two V3s, and the bounds is a rectangle 3. So I can see why you're complaining about that. And besides, this has no P. I think, again, he meant to pass in the entity position and dimension. Except it's called mover here. Okay. Now that all looks fine. A, B, and T. Okay. Yeah. I think we're good.
So we need to actually make this so that this isn't actually in the collision. This is actually in can collide. So what we want to do here is say something like this result equals false, like that. All right. So I think now we should be able to walk through the stairwell. I hope. Oops. Oh, I guess we set a breakpoint there. I don't know why. We must have done it before. So why am I still colliding? Can collide should be returning false now. Oh.
I don't think I was ever colliding with the stairwell, so we might be in trouble here. Where did that come from? Where did he pull that code out from? So in handle collision, this was right here. Okay, so we're taking it out of there.
So we need to actually make
Right.
this so that this isn't actually in the collision.
Yeah.
This is actually in can collide. So what we want to do here is say something like this result equals false, like that.
Okay, so that's gonna be in can collide, and it's gonna be right above where we search for the rule. And look at that. That's a good demonstration of why it's nice to have the result variable always be called that, because then I get to just copy and paste this without changing a name. To be fair, it's only helped me out probably like 2 or 3 times this whole entire time, but it's a benefit that I would never have seen otherwise. It's negligible, but I like anything that can help me be a little bit more lazy.
All right. So I think now we should be able to.
And actually, I should just build and run if it'll work. Okay. Force me to throw it away. Ah, yeah, that's a problem. What was he even passing in for that? This handle overlap. What is getting passed in there? I guess, well, we can't just call it nil. What the hell did he pass in for the ground value? I never saw what he did there. Where is this? This is, yeah, down there. Gosh, how long ago did we write that code? Ground. Where is ground? Oh, okay. Well. And it needs to be an address. Okay, now we'll see how we do. Okay, we do that. And he moves that around. And then, yeah, we start colliding. Okay, so do I collide? Oh, no. Either he has a bug, because this is what should be happening, I think. So either we don't have a bug that he does, or we have a different bug. I want to hope that we just don't have whatever bug it is that he has. And we'll see whenever he goes to step in and debug it here in a second, I guess. But if I don't have, if what he's about to do, well, I mean, if we already have the expected behavior, then, you know, I don't have to worry about it. Whatever change he has to make, right, to fix the collision that he's seeing there, hopefully I'll look at it and I'll see that if I make the inverse, if I change that, if I don't have that change that he has, then, and it starts colliding, then we're in the same place. But if I make that change and it doesn't stop, it doesn't start colliding, then we're in trouble. But that couldn't be. If he's able to fix it that way, there's no way that me introducing the same bug that he has wouldn't cause the same issue, right? Unless there's something else messed up someplace else. I don't know.
So why am I still colliding? Can collide should be returning false now. Oh, is it because I didn't sort those two guys right? Yeah, that's because this isn't sorted. So we need to do this either way. So basically what we need to say is, if it's a stairwell at all, you don't want to do it. There we go.
Well, where was that? Can collide. Yeah. Well, I am no longer sorting those. So this could actually just be a consequence of us using the map and then basically taking the implementation that Casey suggested and storing the pairs on both ends. Because here it's going to look for the rule on the A storage index, whereas with the implementation he has, it wouldn't find that. And that's why he has to check whether it's a stairwell at all. But to his point, if we make this that, because that way it doesn't matter, I think. The point is, I mean, we'd never be testing. Yeah. I don't know. It's weird now because we're storing the rules twice to get that ever so slightly better performance for clearing rules and searching. I think searching rules too. I don't know if this is necessary. I mean, we don't want to do it. Does it matter? Yeah, no, I actually don't know why this would. I think we might have a problem here. I think that could be a problem. Especially, well, I guess if we start colliding now, then I think we're good. We're not. Yeah, so, but we are colliding with other things that we should be colliding with. It's just weird. It makes me think something else is wrong. We collide with the trees, we collide with the monster, we collide with the familiar. We actually get stuck inside of the familiar still. But we don't collide with the stair at all. And so that tells me that something bad has happened. I'm surprised changing the order of things being printed to the screen still hasn't been implemented. Do you mean like the Z sorting with like entities behind other entities actually showing up on top of them, kind of like I mean, that's working, but like you're saying with the familiar, right? The familiar is showing up behind our guy, but our guy is actually behind the familiar, like in the orientation of the world. Yeah, I don't even remember. Yeah, and like you can see the same thing happen with some of the trees here too. honestly don't know if or when that gets solved. Well, it definitely will. I just don't know if I ever got to the point in the series where he does that. But someday. Someday. Yeah, so this is messed up. This is making me question things a little bit, but then again, the collision detection is working elsewhere. It just seems strange. Yeah, like we don't collide with it at all, and that seems messed up. And like we're making it, well, we're making it explicit here now. I set it to true. Collide with this thing. I wonder if me sorting actually has any bearing on any of this. I mean, it is a stairwell. Stops on collision, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, handle collision. Oh. Wait, can collide. Yeah, I don't know. I really do not know. So I'm just gonna back this up, and this just leaves us in the same place that where Casey is. I just don't know why we aren't seeing. I should be able to basically enable the collision, right? Because here it's saying no matter. Oh no, that should be or. Yeah. Okay, that was a goof. Glad I caught that, because that was gonna bug me if I didn't see that. Okay, so now, well, no, we still don't. We're still not colliding. We're only using it in this one place. Maybe does the Did we say that the stairwell, like we have some add stair code, don't we? What the hell? Where do we add the stair? Oh, I'm in the wrong place. Add stairwell, yeah. Did he add collides as a flag, or did he not? Because if that isn't in the flags, then it never would. But maybe he did change that at one point. See, now we collide. And we don't want to, so now if we go back, yeah, maybe he did that and I didn't catch it, because I thought he didn't want collision with the stair to happen, but that seems like the correct thing that should be happening now. So if we just back that off, we should be good to go. We'll stop colliding. Yeah. All right. Now I think we're good.
If it's a stairwell at all, you don't want to do it. There we go. All right.
Yeah, regarding the Z thing, so the order of things being printed is very much like a rendering topic. And so the general order of events, if I remember right, for the next few weeks is that we'll wrap up this traveling up and down Z stuff, and then we'll get into kind of painting a more interesting backdrop than just this gray wasteland we see before us. And then at that point, Casey starts seeing how bad the frame rate takes a hit, and then he goes to work. Well, so he does the backdrop painting, but also adds in some like minimal software rendering for lighting, and doing gosh, I don't want to speak to something that I'm very naive about here, but we just start doing some more rendering specific stuff, and then we get into optimizing that so that the software renderer runs pretty good, even though there's a pretty substantial amount of stuff going on. And that's when like the SIMD work comes up, and that just takes quite a bit of time before getting to, like, just straight up, he goes off into doing quite a bit of optimization stuff, and I've been trying to think about how I'm going to handle that when I get there, because I'd have to call assembly from Odin, and I know there's a way to do it, and I've tried to do it before briefly. I didn't get very far with it. I wanted to see how easy it would be, and it wasn't easy enough for me to just do inside of a couple of minutes. But that could just be because I'm an idiot. That's one thing that Zig made super easy, because it has inline assembly, but Odin doesn't quite make it that easy for you. But maybe it is super easy, and again, I just, didn't figure it out because I'm a nincompoop. And so with a little bit more just time looking at the problem, I'll figure it out. But my whole point is that once we get there, it'll be a point where I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to structure the stream, because it might take me just a lot of time tinkering to get that working before I can move on with the series. But the point is that all the rendering stuff, even though we're going to spend quite a bit of time on it here, like over the next 20 to 30 days, that I still don't, I don't know if he ever fixes this problem. That's wrong. We should fix it. Could be an exercise for me to try and fix it myself, but I know Casey will eventually, and he'll show me how to do it correctly.
So now, in theory, we should be able to do something where we look and see how our stairwells are working. We should be able to get these working. We're going to need some way to actually render where we are in Z, which I guess is our next step. But at first, we can at least go into the debugger and see whether we're actually handling the stairwells by inspection at all, right? Because we just wrote a bunch of code there, and we have no idea what it does or if it works. So let's go ahead and actually do that. So we got our can collide, our handle collision, we blah, blah, blah. This is what we want to see, right? Oh my. What is overlapping the stairwell right now? Dare I ask? Why are we getting called right at startup? Handle overlap. Oh, because we don't check for... Yeah. All right. That's a problem. We don't check for things overlapping themselves. Can't overlap. Right? We remember to do this here, where we did the sort of A not equal to B. So we did this, right? But we did not actually do that for the overlapping. So what we want to do is say that things that are, obviously things that are the same thing can't overlap with each other. Of course, now that I think about it, why are stairwells moving? Oh, because everyone gets moved now? We should probably have a thing that says that stuff like stairwells don't move, right? Like, we probably need a flag for that, because...
That's not going to work, because, I mean, OLS just gave the game away, but I was looking at that, writing that out. He typed out mover does not equal region. Oh, no, okay. How in the hell did this come out to be this way? He's calling it a region, but it's an entity. And so, I don't know, do you call that test entity? What do we call this? And that means it can overlap. Yeah. I thought this was really weird when we were writing those. I was like, this seems just strange. I don't understand that we're testing against the region. I failed to comprehend, but it's just a matter of Casey naming things incorrectly. The code is correct. It's just the name that he's using is wrong. Or maybe he does mean to think of the entity being tested against as the region. I don't know. That seems weird. I don't think so.
Because we really don't need to call move entity on these sorts of things, right? So we want to say that if that's not set, and probably we want to do something here where we do like entity flag movable or something, right? We probably want the concept that something can and can't move to sort of be baked in there in some sense, right?
And so, yeah, the whole movable thing, what was that? Flags. Oh, that's in the sim stuff. Yeah, so entity flags over here. Yeah, let's add. What was it? Wow, that was a hell of a brain fart. Why did I look this up? Movable. Yes, okay. And then it has to be both not non-spatial and, jeez, come on. Show me what I want to see. There we go. Has to be non-spatial, and it also has to be movable. I think he wrote this wrong. What he means to, because he wrote to see if it's not movable. If it's movable, then we should be able to call move entity on it, and not the inverse of that. Yeah.
Entity flag movable equals like that, and then only like our Monstar, our familiar, those.
I guess he did the simming thing last. I think there was a good reason for that, but I can't remember what it was.
Sorts of things would have that. So let's double check that. Sorry, we just never did that, and I was like, why was that thing even getting a move call? So now nothing should be able to move, presumably. No, but it still is. So what did I? Oh, it's right. It's supposed to be is set movable, not is not set. That's kind of obvious. Sorry. There we go. It would be non-movable. All right. So nothing can move now, which is what I wanted. And now we can just go in and say when we add things like the Monstar, add Monstar, we can say that you know it collides and it is movable, right? And I don't know, does add flag allow multiple adds? I assume it probably does, but it's not called add flags. Is the thing that's a little bit weird, don't you think? It seems a bit strange. Add flag. Oops. Add flag.
Looking to see where that stairwell code is. Okay, so stairwell, or it's add stair. So not movable. Wall shouldn't be movable either, but familiars sure are. And a sword definitely is. So is a monster, and then a player is also. So now if we build and run, our walls and our stairs will never have the move entity call. Will never be passed to the move entity call, but monster, well, the monster node doesn't have any movement code right now anyways, but we can move, the familiar can move, we're good.
There is add flag. Grep, add flag. So yeah, this is really add flags. So we should probably say that for now. Let's take a look at that. Add flags, clear flags, 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 flags. There we go. So that way we can just kind of go like, okay, we'll just put both in there. Same thing with the familiar. Oops. And the player and the sword should also be in there, I would think. Right? There we go. We gotta clean those flags up because the collides thing is now all kinds of weird.
It sure is. I wanted to see, ooh, add stair. Yeah, he never sets the collides flag on that. That's super strange. Maybe it's somehow set by default, but that doesn't seem right at all. Yeah. It's just really strange that I never was colliding with the stair, but he was, even though he doesn't set the collides flag in there. Whatever.
And player and the sword should also be in there, I would think. Right? There we go. We gotta clean those flags up because the collides thing is now all kinds of weird. Because we're sort of working on what those systems even mean. All right, so now in theory, we should be able to actually do something with the overlapping. So let's see what we've got. All right. So here we are in our sort of barycentric mapping code. Let's see what we got back. So that's just totally wrong, if I'm not very much in error. So we have a bug here because our y value should not be negative. Oh, you know what? It totally can be negative because these are regions that are overlapping. So yeah, right?
Why can't I dereference that? I thought that was a pointer. What? Cannot dereference ground of type F32 except... Oh. Well. Ugh. Wait, what? Oh, okay, yeah, we dereferenced this on assignment. Okay, that was big dummy moves. And you know what? That could be why I wasn't colliding before. Oh, this sucks. I'm not getting that print statement out. That really sucks. Well, actually, because this region is now supposed to be... Yeah, that's also... Okay, so same thing here as with the can overlap. That was just... Or should this be test entity? Yeah. Okay, now... Okay, so this probably fully explains why things were going haywire before. We're coming full circle here. So this should be testing the test entities, position and dimensions. And yeah. Oh, and then when we call that, we have to pass in the right thing. So this now takes the entity, the mover, and then the test entity. Okay. So now when I walk onto the staircase, we should get a print statement. And we do not. Son of a B word. Okay. Well, surely I'm doing something else wrong then. And handle overlap. This is the min Z, the vary Y, and the max Z. We're passing in the mover P. You get the region rect out of the test entities, position and dimension. No. No. Maybe this is somehow messed up. Looks okay to me. What's going on with can overlap? Is that right? Mover does not equal test entity. And if we have a stairwell, then we say that they can overlap. And then this is happening up here, so yeah, those seem like they're getting passed in correctly. Test entity, rectangle. Maybe let's try leave that in there, I guess, and then we'll see what happens here. Okay, let's do that. I just want to see if the stair is even being tested against. And it doesn't look like it is. Because we don't see anything. Oh, awesome. Stream just died on me.